Underway. Hey Bob, how are you?
Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I'd like to call to order the budget workshop agenda for Thursday, August 31st, 2023 for the budget year 2023 to 2024. Welcome. Daniel, do roll call.
Yes, present on the call right now we have Chairman Walter, Vice Chairman Sylvia, and Secretary Laird. Also in attendance is myself, John Rieger, and Jason Smith from WWRE. And Tiffany Repecki is also in attendance.
All right, great. Welcome, everyone. Daniel, tentative budget discussion. Who's going to start it off?
Sure, I'll go ahead and start off. If you can bring up, okay. Y'all can see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah. So just at the start of this, I just want to remind everyone that the general budget portion of our budget is the only portion that's discussed and passed at our upcoming hearing. We will discuss today part of our capital budget, but it's not part of the legal requirement for us to submit. So just a quick note on that. You can see from this chart that's on the screen now, it's our historic millage rates. And John, I don't know if you mind collapsing the videos.
Yeah, for sure.
Right side. Last year's millage rate you'll see is 0.3919. And so this year is going to be a little bit different. If you can go down to the letter. So in wake of Hurricane Ian, we had a lot of deletions, what the property appraiser calls them. So basically it's destroyed property that they're not able to assess or does not have a value on anymore. And so the effect on that, so this is the letter that Matt Caldwell, our property appraiser, has sent out in July. And it goes in depth a little bit about how we calculate our rates. So I think in previous meetings, I may have misspoke and said that, we can pursue the rollback rate, when in reality, what I would suggest we pursue is the same operating budget in terms of dollars. If you can go to the next slide. So in calculating the rollback millage rate in wake of there's almost $244 million in deletions over Captiva. And so
one question here. I understand that the value of the homes were lost, but what about, I would assume the value of the property.
So without any real estate on the property, it's non-taxable. It's just a vacant, it's basically a vacant lot.
Yeah, I think they're taxing like $75 or something like that for lots.
For vacant lots.
So Daniel, quick question. When you say deletions, because that's the number I was looking for 3 or 4 days ago when you and I were talking about the Matt Caldwell's information.
Yeah.
Because 244 million is the number I had in my head too, but I can't find what Matt was speaking to in a PowerPoint that showed the 244. But I remember, and please definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but the $244 million was the property value that they currently had shown as damages or deletions or non-taxable properties that were previously taxed due to this storm, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, and in summary, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but in summary, the county is saying, here's what we have, $244 million in property values that we taxed previously that in the current tax year is not taxable because of the damages or deletions or effects of Ian. So therefore, those dollars are still going to be made up by the balance of the individuals that were not in the deletion or damage list. Therefore, their taxable dollars will increase accordingly, which will automatically take the millage rate way up.
Right. In the behind the scenes calculations, it falsely inflates the amount of property value on Captiva. So if you were to actually perform the calculated rollback rate, which is what would typically give us the same net total operation dollars, it would be at 0.3511. But then when you take into account those deletions, using that millage rate of 0.03511 would only generate operational budget of just over $600,000, which is in essence a little over 11% decrease in from last year's budget. So to attain a very similar operation budget this year of $677,100, we would need to pursue a millage rate of 0.3948, which would require affirmative votes from 4 of our commissioners. So we need at least 4 commissioners present at our budget hearing.
Okay,
That will be at our next meeting. Oh, no, that is at the one you have to play in.
That's on September 11th. That hearing will start at 5:01 immediately after our monthly budget, our monthly.
We have confirmation I'm not flying in and somebody else is going to be there, or what's going on?
So
gonna be
Mr. Pyle's unable to come back as well. So we would be able to, office would be able to cover the expense of flight if you can get out here.
Okay.
so we definitely need you here if we need 4 votes and we need to be local.
Yes.
When does Pyle show up?
The 14th.
Can we move it to the 14th?
No, this date went out with the trim notice from the property appraiser. So this is a set date.
Yeah, if you remember, I'm not available after, I think our next meeting after this is the 19th to pass. And I've got some medical things that I'm handling on the 21st, so I'm not available to travel for 2 or 3 weeks after that. That's where we ended up with these 2 dates.
So the 11th. Okay. I'm just.
So it's the 11th and the 19th, correct?
Oh, I can't come in twice, guys. Please don't do that to me.
We have to have a tentative and a final, unfortunately.
Well,
Kyle's coming back on the 14th. Is he available
Right.
for the 19th? And
Hey,
Kyle,
hey, Daniel. Let me ask a question here. Is it possible that I know from we obviously are governed by the state and we're elected officials, and we have to do what we need to do in order to make everything legal, which is meeting in person for these. But can you ask attorney if they can see if during the current situation with Storm Ian itself, and then the one we just went through, that possibly this budget meeting could be officially a Zoom meeting?
right, I do know we're under an emergency order right now. I will check with Ralph right after this meeting, and I will follow up with you all to see if that is an option.
Right, but and I just kind of want to add, but because it is by statute that it has to be physical for the hearing. So if we do have a Zoom meeting for this instead, even if Ralph thinks that it's a good idea, they could possibly turn around and say that we didn't do it by statute and that we need to redo the budget.
No, that's what I'm suggesting, because after Ian, they came out and said, we understand the situation and some of these governing agencies won't be able to meet locally.
Right.
So therefore, during this state of emergency or whatever period it was, 90 days, they allowed Zoom meetings, the state did. So that's what I'm clarifying, whether that's an option now.
We'll definitely
I'll
look.
clarify with Ralph, and I'll circle back with you all.
Yeah, if there's any doubt, then no, we should have it in person.
yeah, and let me know. I'm flying around because my 99-year-old mom's having an operation. And so I've got constraints in different places. Okay.
Okay.
We'll definitely shore that up, and I'll circle back with you all later this afternoon with that.
Okie dokie.
Thanks. Go ahead, Daniel, keep going.
So I think everybody's on the same page with the effect of the deletions. I don't know if there's any additional questions on that.
You're going to go through the budgets in detail, right?
Right, we're gonna go through the line items of the budget. I also have Jason to assist with this portion of it. As you can see on the upcoming charts, we have the actual that we've accrued or spent or received an income through July 31st and are projected on the first 2 lines. And then we have our past couple years' budgets and then our projected on the right. So as you can see, last year's operations budget and total number of total dollars was about $678,000. So we're pursuing $677,000 this year.
Hey,
And
Dana, hold on a second. Actual through 7/31/23, that's the actual full year as of July 31, correct?
yes, that's what we've actually spent this year.
And the projected was the actual
I'm sorry, this
budget
is-
that we did?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, Bob.
Okay, column 1, actual through 7/31/23, 630,571.
Yes, that's the amount of
Oh.
income we've received from ad valorem taxes so far this year.
So far, but it's for the full year you're calculating. It's not just October 1 through July 31, correct?
Well, the second column, the projected through 9/30/2023, that's what we're projected to finish at through the rest of the fiscal year.
Okay. So the
That's-
projected through 9/30 is not the budget we did last year. Those are actual what we figured the 12-month period is going to be.
Correct. And so the fourth column, the fiscal year 2022/2023 is what we figured in last year's budget.
So
Got it.
I understand what this is saying. And we got in less money than 21/22 because why did we have less from the ad valorem tax?
Because people could do the disaster relief credit. And that wasn't anticipated when we made the budget at the beginning of the year.
That's what I thought. Okay,
So the big line item change on this.
okay, I got it.
I'll say the big line item change on this is the interest income. It's gonna be generated from switching banks and accruing a higher interest rate on those. You can see, you know, we're projecting roughly $20,000 in interest income for the next year.
Okay.
Next slide.
So the 677,000 is the millage rate you spoke of above.
Yes,
Got it.
And the income from the parking lot and things like that is a whole different
that's
budget.
the capital.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, there's not a lot of huge changes in this chart. We just projected some inflation to the tune roughly. We're projecting a little over $7,000 additional from what we budgeted from last year.
What are the glaring items? Service charges are going up $2,000.
Yeah, Fifth Third charges a lot more in their service fees, but the interest more than covers it.
Right. So it cost us 2, but we got 20. We're net 18 positive.
Correct.
Why are dues and subscriptions going up?
I think we just we've seen the FSBPA, their dues went up. There's a couple other ones involved in that
And
went
we're
up.
doing the 2 this year instead of the 1. So we're doing the big engineers meeting for the FSBPA, and then also like the recent one we're going to now. that
No,
we'll
this
probably
is like
do this
actual
year.
membership costs.
Oh, okay.
A couple of our memberships inflated. I know the FSBPA went up.
Which is like the beach watch. They
Right,
do.
that's the large item that went up. Just our GIS went up a few $100. And then we may have overcalculated.
But I guess when I look at budgets, I kind of assume, unless I know prior to, that what we budgeted and how we were doing previously, we did a good job.
Mhm.
Unless there's some glaring mistakes we made, and then I like to look at what's different, and then I like to know why. And one thing I've noticed that you conveniently excluded are the percentage of increases. I mean, $2,000 on 3,000, it doesn't sound like a lot, but on $3,000, you know, 70% increase.
I guess what he's saying is a chart, if you could have the deltas or the percent increase or decrease, it would make it easier for us to follow.
I agree with Linda on that. You need to see some deltas here.
I mean, we can talk through them now, but in the future, as we lay the stuff out, yeah, we just need to know.
That's fine.
Yeah.
You know, that's a great purpose to this workshop as well. If you guys want to see some additional information and data, we can insert it for the actual hearing when we present it again.
Yeah.
Okay. Insurance, walk me through insurance again. Is this errors and omissions insurance and liability for commissioners, or what does that make up exactly?
The insurance. It's we have our workman's comp insurance. We also have our, you know, accidents,
Vehicle.
vehicle insurance.
Okay, so these are actual numbers our insurance company is giving us?
Based off of, yes.
They're not some wild ass guess?
No.
I'm serious. I want to make
No,
sure.
they're assessed from all the bills we have and then rounded up to the nearest even.
Right. We don't have the final proposal from our insurance company for this year, but it's based off of what they projected. We're anticipating them submitting to us for coverage for the next year.
All right. How
And
about
it's
rent expense?
rounded up to the next 1,000.
That's right. Rounding up to the next 1,000. That's interesting. Rent expense.
Stuff is going up. You know, rent split between the capital and the general fund half and half, is going up, especially with additional service charges for repair of elevator, and other associated increases with our proposed rent.
It's going up to about 2,300 a month.
Telephone.
Yeah, so the new lines for the computers as well as the Comcast services. Comcast has been up in their bill every month ever since Ian. And there's, you know. And that stayed consistent, that they've left it up at a high level.
How much is the charges for the new computers every month?
It's like $70 per line. And then the Comcast went up to like almost $300 a month.
Right. So you got
The
100.
more full year after Ian at this point. We should have absorbed some of that this year.
But just the monthly bill is going up from, you know, every month. It's not like one-time fees. They've increased their service charge to this area out here, as well as when we got the computers that we voted on the other meeting. They have a cellular charge, a monthly cellular charge that's going to cost roughly $140 per month. So that
I guess my question is, did you guys zero base these? I mean, you know, year to date through 10 months, we spent 2287, and you're looking at doubling that for 2 more months next year.
So just with the computer charges alone that we haven't gotten our first bill from, that's
Okay.
going to be an additional almost $1,700 for the next year.
All right.
So then that leaves the other $800 is increased service charges for the Comcast cell service out here.
Is
Or
it
not
possible that
service.
Comcast didn't bill us or charge us during Ian left the court Q4 of 2022?
So they did, and what it looks like happened is that they hit us with the infrastructure charge when they came and rebuilt, and that infrastructure charge has been stretched out, but they're not showing any sign of lowering the bill anytime soon.
All right. And travel, I mean, you just pay for more dues and subscriptions, but you're going to do less travel.
Right, because our actual travel and expenses only totaled out at $2,500 this year.
So you're doubling it.
Because the conference was actually in downtown Fort Myers, so we didn't have to travel or get rooms or anything like that to stay where the conference was.
That's a good point. All right. So $102,500 versus $84,600 this year.
Right, our actual, so we've only increased our projected budget by a little over $7,000 from last year's budget.
I know, but this year's actual, you've increased it $18,000.
Correct.
All right. Again, I mean, anybody got any other comments? But I'd like to, some of these increases that are above 15%, I think you just need to have a work, like a sheet on the side that shows the delta and what it is and zero base it. We probably answered 90% of our questions.
Okay. We can have that prepared for the budget hearing when we go through it there.
Okay. Yeah, because the total is really a 21% increase over this year, correct? 1025.85.
Over our budgeted versus our actual expenditures, yes. Roughly about that.
That's a lot. All right. Any other questions on this page? All right. That it?
John, you wanna go to the next page?
Hello.
So now we're going over our gross wages. Of course, you know, I just got an increase, again, cost of living increase for staff. We're actually going to have parking attendants for the next year. I think those may come out of the capital, but
It's a 42% increase in wages. How much of it is parking that we didn't have this year?
Jason, do you have that?
Well, I tell you now, it's 7,000, right? Because your 21, 22 actuals, I assume were 16. Oh, that's taxes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Daniel, is there a way on this page where you have wages, you can say administrative wages and then parking wages?
I agree.
Jason, I just want to clarify real quick, because I may have, you know, included the parking wages in there, but Jason, do we calculate the parking wages strictly out of the capital, or is that also a split expense between the general and the capital?
No, that's all a capital expense.
Okay, so that's,
Not
none
even
of
in
this
here.
is included in the parking wages.
I didn't catch that, sorry.
So 39% increase on wages. We didn't vote on that.
The 29%,
39.
right?
161
we
versus
also have to figure-
116.
I think John started partway through October, there's a portion there.
So that's what we need. Those are the details we're talking about. I mean, because you said, I think John started.
He
I mean, is
started
it
on
1 month
October
of John?
10th.
All right, so that's not, but we started October 1. So it's call it a month of John, not in the 116, right?
Yeah, Bob's got a good point, because oftentimes when you're evaluating some equities, and some of you might be familiar, you're always looking at same store sales. You know,
Right.
you're trying to establish the same base. So I think Bob's point's well taken. We need to have some separate item there that signifies that there are some different starting points or base elements here.
Yeah,
Because otherwise you're
literally
gonna
it's two
get-
columns. What's in now that wasn't in the actual and why, and then what's in now that we put in and why. And we're not saying the number's wrong. We just need to make sure that the parts add up to the sum.
Right.
Yeah, because there's going to be people like Bob who are going to say, wait a minute, 39%, what are you talking about?
That's exactly what I mean.
You got to compare apples to apples here. We need to be very, very careful when this goes out to the public and they see 39%. They're going to ask some serious questions.
And that's okay, because these numbers they're legitimate. It's, you know, you gotta figure in the 15% raise that was just afforded to me, as well as
Daniel, we're not saying they're not. We're
I
saying
know.
as a board, we need to be able to speak to every dollar
okay.
in detail.
So, and what were you suggesting? I don't know, is that he first have a zero-based budget? Meaning if we spend at the same rate and then what he's proposing, is that a better way to do it? I don't know.
I think all budgets should be zero based. Here's what we did this year. This is why. This is what we don't need this year. This is because. And then here's what we do need and the reason why. And then start from there. And then be able to speak to the discrepancies. Because one makes the assumption that we did the right thing this year and the years prior. right?
Chart is very important and it's a current state, but for the purposes of presentation, we need to expand out for the board to speak to every dollar, but this is the chart and its totality of how it will appear basically in the advertisement when we advertise for the final budget. It's gotta be basically in this format.
No. However you present it legally that you have to is one thing.
Right.
For this purpose, we're looking at a PDF. I would be looking at an Excel with a hidden column that says, let me open this column up and here are all the details that make up these numbers.
No, that makes sense. That's what I'm saying is, you know, for the purposes of presentation, I'll put together additional information when we present it at the budget hearing. And I'm glad to hear this feedback and I'll make sure it's, you know, in detail for the board at the next meeting.
Okay. And again, they may not change. You might be dead on. We just need to understand.
Yeah, we're not, we just want to be able to understand and speak to it. We're not questioning the numbers at this point at all, okay? We might question next time, but not now.
No, that's perfectly fine. And then, you know, on the areas where we do underutilize our budget speaks to, goes into our transfer into our operating reserves and, you know, moves forward to fund the next beach nourishment project.
Yeah, but we're gonna put a number out there based on the knowledge that we have at the time we had it. And the best case scenario of spending in a fiduciary responsibility our taxpayer dollars.
Yes. Okay, the next, we're still on that page, John.
Oops, sorry.
All right, the next item is professional fees that hasn't changed from what we're projecting for this fiscal year. Property appraiser fees, we're keeping the same as the budget from last year. Commissions and tax collector, we actually reduced from what we budgeted for last year, but still $2,000 above what we're projecting for this year, just to have a little cushion. Make sure we can encapsulate those fees within our budget. And our traditional transfer of operating reserves of $84,450. Jason, do you have anything to add to the remainder of our general budget?
The tax collector commission came in lower because the revenues were lower. It's percentage based. So if we're, you know, seeking the same budget, we should stick with, I think 15,000 is fine. 15,500 would have been over budget.
All right. Hey, Dan, the transfer of operating reserve, you kind of cursed over that one pretty quick. Walk me through that.
So historically, we've transferred $84,450 from our general operating account to our capital account.
So you're showing it as an expense because it's going out?
Yes, it's going out, and then when we go over our capital budget, you'll see it coming.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's an expense on this side, revenue on the other side.
Got it. Intercompany. All right, next page.
All right, so that's it for the general budget. This is our capital budget. This is, I would almost say it's a living document that's easily amendable. It's something that we don't have to file, but it's for our internal purposes to track our upcoming expenses and projects.
It's important to note that during the hearing, we should avoid conversation of anything about the capital budget in detail, because then we would have to report that as part of the hearing.
So as we start with the general budget, we're starting with the capital with our grant income. Our local grant income is projected at $261,482. That's for a TDC grant for maintenance of the Allison Haggard parking lot, our beach vehicle. And those fees include, you know, the portable restrooms, leveling the lot, landscaping, and half of our beach ambassador wages. It's much different than the previous year because we received grant income related to our beach nourishment project. The state level currently.
Hold on a second. So in the course of a normal year, year 2 or year 3 coming out of a nourishment, what we normally have historically seen drops like this.
I don't know about the budget from 2015 with the previous project.
And also, yes, because this would have been coming out from the special assessment from the 2021 project, so you're not going to see a $17 million expense like last time.
Is there anything here that is about Ian? Monies from Ian or any of that, or is this all just beach renourishment? And
so this is anything on the capital projects side. Under the state column, we have $600,000 of projected grant income. Those are mostly from the appropriations portion of it for the coastal resiliency as well as the beach vehicle. We do have other requests out there for appropriations for the dune walkovers as well as the parking lot revenue loss, but I'm not very confident in receiving funding for those. If we do receive funding for those, we can amend that portion of the income budget as well as amend the expenditure for the actual projects when we get down to that portion of the capital budget. But for the time being, the state grant funding includes the coastal resiliency study as well as the beach vehicle and some residual monitoring from our beach nourishment project. It's already allocated funds.
so where is the money for the next beach nourishment, the 12 million that we need?
It's roughly $13 million that
Okay.
we are not yet under contract for. Again, if we do receive the funding, I believe it's going to be under a reimbursement basis. So we have to actually have the project and complete the project and request the funds for it to actually show up in there. I'm not
And
certain that's
should
going to
it be
happen
on-
within this budget.
That doesn't make that much sense to me.
Well, if we
Well, anything
project-
coming from the federal government is going to be a reimbursement, not a fronting of money. So we'd have to go out and bond it, pay for it, and get reimbursed. Correct, Daniel?
That's how I understand it. Yes.
Yeah,
And if we go through that process, I don't believe there's a way that we can go through that entire process within this next year and actually receive that reimbursement within this next budget year. So that didn't include that in this portion.
Yeah, at our next monthly meeting, we need to talk a little bit more about that because I mean, I did a pretty good walk on the beach, well, admittedly prior to this last storm, and I was quite impressed with how much beach had been coming back.
I agree, and I think Nicole can likely speak to that a bit because she's been processing the survey monitoring data that we did in July. So she can likely speak to how much sand has returned to the beach. I know that when I first started with CEPD, it was shortly after Tropical Storm Eta, and I just remember those 4-foot escarpments along the entire dune. It's just,
Yeah.
the beach is nothing like that for sure.
So Daniel, if I've never seen these numbers before, I mean, you've highlighted the 5.3, so I'll speak to that. If I'm looking at this for the first time and I don't know what I'm looking at, I see, wow, we got $5.3 million for this, and now we're expecting $262,000. What happened?
So the 262,000 is actually the highest grant we've received from Lee County TDC in our history. That's just separate.
I think what Bob's speaking to is instead.
I want 5.3 million. Why can't I get 5.3 million?
I think what you're getting at is instead of lumping it together, separating out as different grant incomes. Each nurse.
Well, or somehow indicating that stuff is that some of it's for the renourishment or having more detail, maybe asterisks that this is renourishment money, one-time money, or something.
Yeah, what's non-reoccurring? that we're not going to get, and why?
Right.
I'm a
Well,
very simple guy. I just say I want 5.3, not 262,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the beach nourishment, we got roughly $5.2 million or so. From the county, if I remember right. I don't remember the.
Well, that's
exact-
what we're looking for, Daniel. We got 5.3. X $0.4 million, whatever, is non-reoccurring because of blah, blah, blah.
I think these need to stand on their own a little bit more. I mean, you know everything here, Daniel, but you never know what life the slides in the budget are going to take. So it needs more info to explain it to people who might just look at the slides.
And this slide, I would even put a caveat at the bottom, just, above where you have the asterisk where it says grant income is
Totally.
provided. I would have a summary down there.
Totally
But
agree.
you could break them out by grant number, if we have that information available. For instance, we have a grant number associated to the actual income from the state, for the renourishment is 21 LE1 and 19 LE4. I can include those as separate items.
Yeah, this is very simple. We got 5.3, we're only going to show 261. What's different?
Mhm. Okay.
And again, the numbers may be perfect. We
Sure.
just all need to understand them.
And then, to that effect, the special assessments, we give that option to pay, for people to pay up front for their beach nourishment project. A lot of them did. You can see we are expecting roughly $2.9 million, or we received roughly $2.9 million in upfront payments on that assessment. And that's gonna, basically be deferred to the annual, the amortized schedule. So we're only gonna get 958,000 projected this year. So there's
All right, so the amortized annual fee right now is 958,000. That's going to be same, I assume, for the next 6 years.
it'll,
Roughly.
No, it'll go
Rough-
down
yeah.
because of interest. The interest is charged based on the remaining balance every year. The interest will be a little bit lower.
Got it.
And that doesn't, other people might sell their properties throughout the year. And when that
and
happens,
that expedites
balance
the
too.
balance, correct? Yeah,
yeah.
that becomes a closing
So-
cost. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so if nobody were to pay their balance in full from selling their house in the upcoming year, 958 is what's going on the tax roll.
Got it. See, good explanation.
So the next item is the parking fees. We estimated roughly at 42,500, which is lower than we typically estimate. In the past, we usually use about $60,000 to $70,000 per month. But up until our parking lot starts generating that type of income again, we reduced our projection per month to about.
Well, so you're budgeting the fact that you're not going to do a good enough job?
Huh. Well, I would rather under promise and over deliver than over promise and under deliver.
Well, that's showing, under promising is showing a 6% increase when I want 26. But I mean, if we're going to do 700,000, then we should, and historically we've been on that pattern, and we have no reason to believe that won't continue. It's a crystal ball, I get it. But if we have no reason to believe that historically it won't continue in demand to be the same, then we should show that money.
Okay. Well, our highest month since reopening after Hurricane Ian was in July when we did I think it was roughly about $45,000 for the month of July, which included the July 4th holiday.
There was a lot of
We
factors
can
in there, though.
increase
We
that
had 5 or
number.
6 spots that weren't open. We still had dunes in some places. There wasn't a lot of demand on the island yet because of where we are. I mean, there's a lot that spoke to that.
Well, if you'd like to increase that number, we can certainly do so. So I was saying the capital budget's easily amendable. We can do that. I know the board at past meetings has given direction to be a little less reliant on our parking lot funds going forward. So maybe we lowball that a little bit, but I can move it to 600,000-700,000 if that's how the board wishes to show it.
Well, another way to do it is say, historically, we've done annualized 733,000. Let's just say.
Okay.
We think that we're going to do, and I'm not saying do exactly what I'm saying, I'm just throwing out a scenario. 733,000 historically, that's the pace that we were on. But due to this traffic reductions coming through the tolls, through the bridge in Sanibel, still being in, a state of disrepair, for that lack of a better term, we're going to see a 10% reduction in traffic flow. So therefore, we're going to come in at 90% of 733 million or 733,000. That makes sense to me. That's something, whether you're right or I'm right is not really the issue. It's, does it make sense?
Mhm.
And that's what I'm personally looking for. So it may not be 733, maybe it's 698, maybe it's 720. But just philosophically, what do you want to do?
And I don't think we've had a normalized year in the past 2 years at the parking lot, considering the beach nourishment. We did shut it down for a couple months. I think the last full year that we did, the parking lot generated, I think it was $670,000.
All right, then consider that a normalization. That's what it did. If it was 3 years ago, normalizing the cost or the cap, under normal situations, we did 680. We'd like to see a 5% increase over the, a compound increase over the next, 3 years. So that's 5%, 5%, 5%. What's that number? And then we come in at 90% of that.
Okay. The next line item is that reserves transfer that we spoke of from the general budget. Again, we've increased our projected projected interest income based
Wow.
on the new interest rate. And
That's nice.
we have other income, I think. Is that the assessment letters and others, Jason?
It's just random things like a refund. It's nothing specific or particular. Just a kind of a
$2,000.
catch-all, and it's going to be a small amount under most circumstances. In the general fund, the other includes the $200 estoppel fee.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no other questions on the income slide, I can move on. Okay, so up top in the admin expenses, see our assessment collections, we actualized $1,563 for this year. We just budgeted $2,000 to cover that. The beach vehicle, we have $10,000 of expenses, and truth be told, we still have not yet received the invoice for that beach vehicle. We've had it for 4 or 5 months now, and nobody will send us an invoice for it, so we've not yet paid that expense.
Whoa. Every time I hear that, in my personal life and my business life, the ultimate surprise comes out in 6 weeks and we get stuck with something. What do you mean we haven't been billed for it?
They've not sent us an invoice through our multiple, I think we've called in 30 times to send us an invoice so that we can pay it.
And what they tell us is that John Deere corporate is backlogged on the invoicing and that it's up to them to send it.
Who do we buy it from?
John Deere, North Carolina.
Oh, all right. Who are you calling then?
John Deere, North Carolina.
Okay, I'm confused now.
Right.
That's not John Deere corporate.
It is, yeah. And that's who
Alright.
the local salesperson said that the invoice comes through. And it's as many times as we've requested the invoice, it's never been sent.
And you're requesting from our local rep or North Carolina John Deere?
Both.
All right.
We have grant funding waiting for that from the TDC. Once we do receive it and pay that expense, we have almost, I think, a little over $10,000 grant funding for that beach vehicle. waiting.
When do we get it?
April, was it?
Yeah,
April?
And they sold us a vehicle with no money down and nothing.
no, we put,
We didn't put any money
No.
down.
mm,
No, we haven't paid 1 cent to it yet.
And we've registered the vehicle, I assume, right? Because it needs to be registered with the state.
yep,
How do we do that without a purchase sell?
What do you mean registered?
I mean, it's filed for insurance and it's not a,
It's insured through us, but we don't have like a tag for it or anything. It's not a street legal vehicle.
You might want to see, you might want to ask Sawicki or something like that if he needs to be registered with the state.
Yeah, I would agree with Bob. This seems really odd to me. You know, you're putting out a vehicle, okay, it's not on the street, but it's out there in public. And second, I find it incredibly odd that John Deere would not submit an invoice by now, unless they're just putting it off as a charity, but
You and me
it
both,
seems really odd to me.
it is.
not for lack of trying. I guarantee that. The other item in the beach vehicle section is the maintenance of that beach vehicle, which it's currently under maintenance right now.
So
for
hold on,
service.
Daniel, back. We have a purchase sell agreement that we signed for the vehicle showing an amount of money, correct?
Yes,
It's signed by John Deere.
correct.
Okay, so I mean, I hope you guys obviously are just clear that you don't understand it either. But I mean, maybe we're not pushing the right button. I can't imagine that any company in today's world is not invoicing as quickly as possible.
That is
bring
the
revenue
exact
in.
conversation that I've had many times. I don't understand why they like we're beating down their door trying to pay their money. Usually it would be the opposite effect. They'd be beating down our door trying to get their money. I don't. Yeah.
All right, keep digging with John Deere. Make sure you're talking to an administrative individual, not a file clerk somewhere.
Yes.
And if worst case scenario, they're a public company, go online, find out who their CFO is, and send them an email and say, "Hey, I've been trying to pay your company. Maybe I can help you with earnings if you actually, collected what you sold." And I guarantee you'll have an invoice within 48 hours.
Okay.
Sounds like somebody speaking from experience.
So,
I like to go to the C-suite.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get us off track with being a little frustrated about not getting an invoice for that. That probably should have been an offline topic, but yeah. Rent expense, we kind of went over that in the general budget. That's a line item that's split between the general and the capital budget.
Can I talk about that real quick?
Yeah.
So on the rent, the lease includes a inflation adjusted increase each year. And the CAM charges are variable depending on what work she has done to the whole building and utility bills, things like that.
So for Cam, is she hitting us with every special bill she has? Is that the way our contract's written? That if I spend money, therefore the CAM can be passed on as a percentage of space?
Yeah, but it's a percentage split up between all the tenants in the celebration house.
Is it based on square footage or number of tenants? For example, we have 600 square feet, but the pizza guy might have 1,500 square feet. Are we paying the same CAM?
Right, I could look, I'll ask and look into that.
It's definitely a item of note because I know for sure that we have much less visitors than the pizza guy does, and so the amount of times we use that elevator versus the amount of times they may use that elevator.
Right.
Probably.
Now you're thinking like a CEO, right, Fred?
I have the lease pulled up. It is based on square footage per tenant.
All right, that makes sense. It's only a fair way to do it, frankly. Keep going.
So now we're in the parking lot expenses. Apologize, we don't have the heading for that. This the left, the actual. Okay, so the second column is still the projected through the end of it. That doesn't make any sense. Sorry, I'm pulling up the headings because I've gotten a bit off track. So the left column in this is our fiscal year 22-23 amended budget, and our second column is the actual through the end of July. So we have our credit card fees for the.
So can I ask Daniel real quick, why would the titles change? The columns.
Administrative oversight when this was put together.
Say that again?
An administrative oversight when I put this PowerPoint
Oh,
together,
got it.
screwed up.
All right, good answer.
So our projected through the end of the year is $18,000. That's what we budgeted for. Park mobile fee, we have a 25. Jason, do you have an explanation for the increase in that handy?
No, so the credit card fees is a line from prior years when we were doing a comparative. Because prior to Park Mobile, we were charged credit card fees whenever somebody paid a credit card. So that line's actually blank. The Park Mobile fee
Oh, shoot.
for the year is 18,000. Increase from last year's budget of 12,000 because we're anticipating more revenues.
Thank you. I'm reading from a distance, so I apologize. Parking lot maintenance we have at $25,000. Anticipating, obviously, some projects for increasing the signage as well as grading of the lots and other items.
Hey, is there a reason, and maybe I'm wrong, but I believe what I heard you say earlier, under salaries and wages, that included parking lot. But just from a GAAP perspective, general accounting principles for those, from a GAAP perspective, if the revenues are in the capital, therefore the payroll should be in the capital as well.
Right, so anything, yeah,
It's on the next slide, correct?
I believe so.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the wages for the parking attendants are fully included in the capital budget for this.
Okay, so so going back to the general budget, you mistakenly said that there was both. So that's just administratively.
Right.
So we definitely need a reconciliation to that.
Right, the general fund wages is basically myself and John.
All right, so we definitely need we need a clear reconciliation of that because that went up much more than we discussed. All right, moving on.
The maintenance line includes back bay as well.
Okay.
You said back bay.
Yes,
Correct? Not back pay. Got it.
Back Bay Property Services. So we have the portable restrooms, we projected 75,000. I believe the actual projected for this year is lower, due to, closures of the lot, so we didn't have full service or didn't have porta potties for a good portion. $1,000 in signage, which
I'm glad Renee's not here. We have like a 4-day conversation about toilets, but unfortunately, I do agree with Renee. So, how many porta potties do we have there? 3 or 4?
we have 2 regular porta potties and 1 handicap accessible.
And we're paying $6,300 a month. Does that include pump out?
Yes, that's 3-day-a-week service. And it's the same porta potty company that was utilized in the Sanibel portion of the Turner Beach parking lot.
and that is fully reimbursable expense through TDC.
Oh, okay. Well, we should, I mean, it's nice that it's reimbursable and it's feel good, but again, fiduciary responsibility, we should be quiet. That's a lot of money, man.
Yeah, so initially, a few years back, I had hired a few people on the way, and our biggest problem was getting even any of these companies to agree to come out here any more than 1 or 2 times a week. So that's why we wound up with Premier Portable, who at the time, while we had a full lot, they were coming out and servicing daily. And they're the only company that we've gotten to agree to even that level of service at this point.
Yeah, I understand.
And a perfect.
Same problem in South Sea.
We could build a permanent structure there, but I don't see that happening.
Now, we have to use their pump out service because they own the porta potties.
Yes.
That's the racket. That's the software part of the hardware business.
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
So next section, John. Okay, here's the wages portion of the capital budget. That includes the parking attendants. And you know, professional fees, which I believe would include the lobbyists and you know, a portion of our attorney's fees, if there's, you know, and others.
And lobbyist Ralph, and I would imagine WWRE as well.
Which is the same year, this year versus what we're projecting through the end of yeah, this.
How
I
much
thought Becker's fee was going up and that's why we increased it.
Gotta look, yeah.
How much do we pay the lobbyist?
Six.
So the lobbyists, last invoices I saw were $6,000 a month.
Okay. So that's, okay, thank you.
Again, Daniel, for our next meeting, we don't review the capital. And I think John mentioned it or someone did that we don't want to have a lot of conversation on it, or we're going to have to, you know,
Correct, yeah.
post anything that we do. But I would certainly, we can have a workshop on it, right?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I think we probably needed a little bit more detail on another workshop for some of these. I mean, 235,000 versus 135 budgeted. Again, these columns may not make sense, but it's a lot of money.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Next is the capital projects. Right up at the top, we see coastal resiliency phase 2 study. We have $500,000 line item in there with potentially a $400,000 grant associated to that to offset. We have the LGFR local grant funding requests that we do year over year with Aptum. They help us substantiate our grant funding through the state.
What is the coastal resiliency phase 2 monies? The actual?
Which portion, Linda?
120,000, 126.10.
Yeah, 120,000.
Is that what's been spent on the project so far?
No,
Well, phase 2, we haven't spent that, so
we haven't spent money on phase
Right.
2.
that. I'm certain that is a clerical error from renaming from last budget for phase 1 and other work.
That's 2 clerical errors.
Striking on fire, I know.
That's what you've paid Aptum so far this year.
Oh, that's what we've paid Aptum so far this year altogether?
Yes.
So maybe we take out phase 2 and say coastal resiliency charges Aptum.
Well, Aptum does more
This-
work than just the resiliency portion of it, so I would probably, we just need to delete that portion of it out.
How
Actual
much
projected.
was the vulnerability assessment? Was that
I think it's
120?
$60,000 off the top of my head.
Okay, so yeah, that's right. Okay, well, so you'll straighten that out, right?
Yes, those 2 numbers, we'll delete them because they are associated elsewhere.
Okay.
Apologies for that.
Okay, keep going.
We have dune protection fencing. That put out 10,000.
Sure, we're not gonna have to do fencing versus ropes and poles and blah, blah, blah. Okay.
That's well, fencing. We put fencing, but that essentially is ropes and poles for replacement. We do have you know, I talked offline with Bob a bit, and you know, that number may fluctuate depending on the board's desire to replenish all of the ropes and poles. Because when we generated the $10,000 number, I was at that time under the influence that we wanted to do only the public access locations. And after speaking with Bob, he enlightened me that we should pursue replacing all of the ropes and poles that we had previously done. We do have a FEMA grant outstanding for 75% of that replacement cost, so it would likely end up being, I don't know, $10,000 out of pocket from CEPD anyway, but that number should, you know, if we pursue all of the replacement of the ropes and poles, when we initially installed it, it was $91,000 or so.
Yeah, I just think everybody has an expectation that, you know, when we're back to normal, that means back to normal and things look normal.
I do know that we had a lot of controversy surrounding that. Some folks didn't like the ropes and poles and other to replace, but that's the direction of the board to replace all of them. Then I'm fully on board with that, and we can get that project up and running.
Well, having said that, I know if you know, I think when we talked a couple weeks ago, I mean, if we have an owner on their own property or like, I do not want those, then let's not do them. That's fine. I don't spend that money. But I think majority of people want them and like them.
Okay, that makes sense to me, and I'm on board with that. So, following that item, you know, once
Probably, before we do anything on that, we should let Renee weigh in, because if he doesn't agree, then we're gonna go around in circles again.
No, we're just putting a placeholder for dollars.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
we're not committing any project right now.
fine.
so we can definitely alter that and show the offsetting funds and the other portion of it, and the income portion of it. We have year 2 monitoring, which is another survey from APTA, much the same as we did in July. Year 2 tilling, we have to perform tilling every year for the first 3 years following the beach nourishment prior to the start of sea turtle nesting season. This season cost us just something like almost 17 grand. So we put a placeholder for 20 grand to get that done this next year. Redfish pass permitting. Some of you may know that we've been undergoing studies for a number of years on Redfish Pass to get that noted as an acceptable borrow area in the event of an emergency for sand placement. Is now been deemed as so, but we'll have to permit it to get it done so we can tap into that resource if the event occurs where we need that sand.
So, okay, so we have to get it permitted. We need to get it permitted now, or
It would like, I believe they do it in, was it 15-year increments or so? So if we get it permitted, then it'll be available in the event of a hurricane where we need to get a quick resource to sand. And that one, you know, it's obviously not 6 miles offshore like our normal borrow area is. So it would help reduce emergency costs in the future if we do pursue that.
See, the problem is you got to spend the money and do all the work to track what's there. So when you ask to use it, all your information is the latest and greatest.
and we do this every 10 or 15 years.
It's an insurance policy
Yeah.
for quick nourishment.
Mhm.
Hey, Daniel, before I forget, FYI, circle back with me on another topic in the next week or so. The DEP installed a tidal, wind, and weather monitoring gauges on on Redfish Pass. If you're going to Land's End on our property, right where that turn is, I had them mounted on the seawall there.
Okay.
So we have the ability to gather a lot of that information in South Seas now. I mean, anything that it can gather, I'm more than happy to share with the CEPD and others.
Sure. I'll circle back with you on that for sure. Thank
All
you.
right.
And then the last line item is grant to other agency. That's the coastal resiliency manager portion of the salary that we agreed to at board meeting. I think it was April or May.
Huh? I didn't hear that. So this is for the coastal resiliency manager, right?
Yes.
And
Carrie.
Carrie, and we're paying more than that and you're going down?
We had other grants outstanding this year. We had the 75,000 for Carrie. Jason, what other line items are you tracking in that grants to other agencies?
They sent us a final bill
My
in,
suggestion is that Carrie has done a very, very good job. She's really come a long way. And that we should be talking to, she perhaps deserves a raise.
We just renewed that.
Right, and
Oh,
that,
they renewed it, they didn't ask for any more money?
and she's not, yeah, she's not technically a CEPD
Oh, I
employee,
understand that.
so.
Okay,
They asked for additional $75,000 a year for 2 years, which is what we just renewed.
It's not
okay,
an
but
additional 75,000, it's 75,000 for 2 years.
it's just continuing on,
Right.
Yeah,
fine.
75,000 for 2 years per
Daniel,
year.
your question on the additional money.
Yes.
There was a payment made to them for 26,184 in December of 2022. I believe that was this final bill for sea turtles that should have been in the prior year's budget, but we.
Okay, so that's the explanation
bill
between
till
the
late.
$26,000 drop off. Okay. Thank you, Jason. Alright, so next. And then this slide basically shows our loan payments, our principal and our interest payment. The interest payments, I think, due in November and the principal in May.
Correct. We pay interest only November and principal and interest in May.
Which coincides with the time some of our T-bills end.
Yep.
And I think that's the last slide.
Yep.
All right, so we're not voting on anything today, correct?
Correct. So today was to gather feedback and make adjustments for our presentation at the next meeting.
And again, to everybody, that's got to be in person.
So Daniel, you're gonna check something and then I'm gonna make reservations, is that right? After you tell me, yes,
Correct.
Linda, go.
I will check with Ralph to ensure, you know, this can't be a virtual thing due to the recent storm.
Okay.
And I will send a mass email to all commissioners to notify them whether or not it's in person required. Which I suspect
Okay.
it will be in person required, but I'll do that due
We'll
diligence.
try not to have it that way, obviously. And on the 18th, do I have to be there both dates? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yes.
Sugar.
Because
Okay,
at this point, I cannot, we haven't really heard from Mr. Pyle, so I can't necessarily say that he would be available to be there or not, because he's been kind of.
We will also
Outdoors
try
there.
after this meeting, Linda, to get in
Yeah.
touch with Mr. Pyle to see if
can you
he
work
will
it
be able for
through,
the
because
19th.
then I'll get reservations to go here and there.
Yeah, Linda, why don't you go ahead and book your flights, but pay for the refundable flight? That way you can always change it or just
Yeah.
cancel it.
Yeah, I just checked, the one is so cheap, so I'm gonna get I'll get a one-way down right now and then figure out when I'm going back.
Okay.
Okay, but just confirm, Daniel, okay?
I will.
Thank you, Linda.
Yep, and I checked and I can stay in my house, which makes my life so much better.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Well, I appreciate all the feedback that you all have given me on this presentation. We'll incorporate those changes into the PowerPoint for the next meeting, so we have a more thorough and efficient explanation of some of these items. And you know, if any other feedback occurs to you after this meeting, just reach out to me and I'll make those changes.
Perfect. All right, before we adjourn, any more discussion?
Nope, doing fine.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.